Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So today we'll be talking about Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha. So for those of you who don't know, Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha were two militant Sikhs who fought against the Indian government from 1984 to 1992. But they were born a bit earlier, and we'll be going over their history today as it is their Shaheed Day. So Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda was actually born in 1961 in a small village in the Amritsar district, and Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda was actually doing his BA, and he was in the second part of his BA when the 1984 attack happened on Sachkhand Sri Harjinder Sahib. And it built up a lot of rage inside Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, and he went out and he wanted to take revenge for what happened to the Sikhs, to Santji, to other Sikhs, to the Shardalus, to Darbar Sahib. He wanted to get badala for what happened. And it was a similar case for Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha. Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha was born in 1962 in Ganganagar, and which is near Rajasthan. And Sukhdev Singh Sukha was actually doing his MA in English. So it wasn't like these people didn't have a future. So Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda was doing his BA, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha was doing his MA. So they were both going towards prosperous careers. But again, because of the Darbar Sahib attack, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha's family was very strong into Gursikhi as well, and his parents were Amritdhari, so he had Gursikhi inside him from a young age. So when the Darbar Sahib attack did happen, he as well was filled with a lot of rage, and he went on as well to take badala for what happened at Sachkhand Sri Harjinder Sahib. Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha's friend Bhai Rajo actually went along with them, and they joined a Jathebandi, and it was there where they actually met Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda. And it was from there that Bhai Rajo was actually arrested, and he was tortured, and he was martyred. And that only just fueled the anger that they both had against the Indian government, and it just fueled the anger, and then they actually went on to a more militant assault against the Indian government to actually get them to stop what they were doing. So Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha made Delhi their centre, in the sense that because of most of the genocide attacks that happened in November 1984, they were centred around Delhi. Those attacks that took place, Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha wanted to take badala for what happened there as well. So they made Delhi their centre, and it was also the best place to do it, in the sense that the government was also operating in Delhi. The central government operates in Delhi, so anything they would do would go straight to the centre government. And it would be under their control. So it was quite a bold move for them to actually do what they did in Delhi. So after doing small bomb blasts in Delhi, and also using their the technology they had at the time to get rid of certain members of the government that had actually a major involvement within the attacks that took place in November, Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda was actually arrested when he was in Gujarat, and his escape was one that you could say was almost movie-like. It was something that you would think would never be possible, but it actually happened. So Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda actually asked them to undo his handcuffs. When they did, he made the excuse that he wanted to go to the bathroom, so they undid his handcuffs, and when he did, he ran, and he was able to escape the police's forces in Gujarat, and then he slowly made his way back to Punjab. Some people even say that he actually walked all the way to Punjab because he didn't want to get caught in buses and trucks, because the police were frantically searching for him once he had escaped. So one of the first greatest actions that Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha actually did was killing off Arjun Das and Lalit Makkan. So these two people were actually government officials that had taken huge part in the Delhi massacre and the Delhi genocide that took place. And these two especially had almost reinforced it, in the sense that they were encouraging those mobs to do what they did. So they were supplying weapons, they were supplying tires, fire, bottles of petrol, things like that. They were supplying all those. They were telling people to do to kill off Sikhs, to burn them, to rape their women, to do things like that. So all that kind of stuff was encouraged by these, mainly by these two officials. So when Jinnah Sukha actually killed these two, it was quite a big deal, because these were obviously two government officials that had security, that were well protected by the government because of what they did, and yet they couldn't stand alone. They couldn't actually do anything against two Singhs. So it was quite a big deal when these two Singhs actually managed to do that, and from there they became the most wanted Kharko Singhs in Punjab. So 2 years after the Darbar Sahib attack, Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinnah, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha decided that it was now the best time to get rid of General Vaidya. For those of you who don't know, General Vaidya was the commanding general of the Darbar Sahib attack. So there were three main generals: General Vaidya, General Dayal and General Brar. But the main superior was General Vaidya. Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinnah, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha actually went to his old home, unaware that he had actually moved, because the government had moved him to Poona so that he would be safe and out of Punjab. So when they found out that he was in Poona, they staked out the surrounding areas until they eventually actually saw him in his garden. And from there they then staked out his house, and they figured out what times he would leave his house, what times he would return, and they were trying to figure out his schedule in a way that wouldn't make themselves too obvious, but at the same time they would be able to then know his whereabouts when they would then decide to actually go for the kill. On August 19, 1986, around 11 o'clock in the morning, Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinnah, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha saw that General Vaidya was actually going out with his wife on shopping, and he was actually driving the car himself. So usually he had security detail, but this time Rab di Kirpa naal he was actually on his own, and he was driving the car himself. So Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinnah, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha actually followed him on a motorcycle, and Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinnah pulled up right next to him, and Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha actually shot. The bullets hit General Vaidya straight in the head, so the car then obviously came to a stop because no one was able to drive, and the Singhs actually yelled out Jagare, saying that we've finally gotten Badla for what happened at Darbar Sahib, and then they made their getaway. So then in September 1986, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha actually went back to Poona, and he went back to Poona with a few Singhs to actually get back some weapons that they had left there from after attacking Vaidya. And unfortunately they actually got into an accident with a truck, and they were then arrested because all their weapons were with them, and they were then arrested, and Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha was subjugated to a lot of torture, and they tried to find out, obviously, you know, where the other Singhs Takane were, where the other Kharko Singhs were, and they weren't able to, and so they sent Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha to prison. Now, whilst that was all going on, Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinnah was actually working with General Lab Singh. So General Lab Singh was another Singh who had been helping the Kharko Singhs for a very long time, and he remained in the background because no one ever suspected him. And he was actually he was a top police officer, and he was obviously a general, so a lot of people had a lot of respect for him, so it was very difficult for the government to pinpoint him. He also played a big hand in getting Badla for Surinder Singh Sodhi. When Surinder Singh Sodhi was killed during May 1984, he actually had a big hand in getting Badla for that as well. So Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinnah and General Lab Singh actually carried out the largest bank robbery that ever took place in India, where they robbed a massive amount of government money. So it wasn't the people's money, it was the government's money. So they actually took a bounty of 6 crore, so which roughly translates to about $6 million US. So you can see that's quite a massive sum of money, and they were able to do it without killing anyone, without causing any harm. And so it was quite a big deal that that the Singhs had been able to do something like that, and even now it remains as one of the biggest bank robberies that's ever taken place in India. So 1 year later, Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinnah was actually then arrested at a Gurdwara in Delhi. So they had gone to a Gurdwara to meet a few Singhs, and whether it was traitors in the ranks or someone had tipped off the police. We're not entirely sure, but Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, a massive police force came to arrest Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda. At the time, he did not have any weapons, so at Majnu Ka Tilla, which was the Gurdwara that they were arrested at, Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda was actually shot in a brief encounter, and they had then threatened to remove his legs in a fake operation, where they would have gotten rid of his legs so that he had no so that he was always on then government asra, so he would have been had to take the help from the government. And he kind of laughed at the idea, and he remained in Chardi Kala, and he said, you can do whatever you want to me, I've done what I came out to do. So you know, we can see that even in such dire times like that, where he was being tortured inhumanely, he still remained in Chardi Kala. So it just shows the importance of Gursikhi, of Naam Simran, and of trusting in Waheguru. So in the Poona jail, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha and Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda were actually reunited, and it happened as well through Naam Simran, through Waheguru part. So for those of you who don't know, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha and a few other Singhs were actually doing Rehra Sahib. Once they had done Ardas and they had let out a Jakara, Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, who was in a similar location in the jail, he actually heard the Jakara and he replied to it. And Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha, Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, they both recognized each other's voices, and they were able to reunite, and they realized that they were both in the same jail. So then they carried on, even in the jail, they carried on, you know, fighting against injustice, whether it was cellmates that were being beaten mercilessly, whether it was unfair treatment in the food halls, wherever it was, they tried their best to fight against injustice no matter what was going on. So Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha were then transferred to Bombay, where they were then prosecuted and they were sentenced with the death penalty for General Vadya's murder. And even in the court, even in front of the lawyers, they remained in Chardi Kala, and they talked saying that, you know, we didn't kill an innocent person. This person had killed thousands of Sikhs just because he thought he was protecting the country. So you can't be justifying his actions when we've just killed the person who killed so many of us. So it was definitely a big upralla from Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha. They had that inner Shakti inside of them. And once they actually were given the death penalty, when they returned to the Bombay jail, they actually gave out laddus, and they actually gave out sweet dishes, saying that we've got our date of marriage now with death. So they were happy that, you know, they had done what they had done, and they were now able to give a great Shaheedi. So they spent their last 4 years doing Bhakti, and it was recorded in Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda's jail chittiyan that their regular Nitnem included doing Sukhmani Sahib 11 times, Japji Sahib 25 times, and spending around 3 hours at Amrit Villa doing Waheguru Simran. So there was a lot of Bhakti that they did, and you can see, if we look in history, if we look at a lot of the Sikhs in history that have fought in similar cases, for example, Baba Deep Singh Ji first did Bhakti for so many years, and then they fought, and then they gave their Shaheedi. Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha fought first, and then they said that now it's our duty to make sure we do our Bhakti as well, so that we could then get Kalgiyan Wale Pasha's Khushiyan when we go to Sachkhand. So on the morning of the 9th of October 1992, the day that Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha were actually given the Phansi da Saza, they had woken up at 12 o'clock in the morning, Amrit Villa, 12 a.m. So they then did their Amrit Villa, and they did Part until 3 o'clock in the morning, and they dressed in white chole, and they tied Kesri Dastara and Kesri Kamar Kasse, so that saying that they wanted to go in a true Khalsa Roop, and they wanted to, even in death, they wanted to show that Khalsa spirit that they had. They shook hands with the leader of the jail, the head of the jail, and they thanked him for keeping them for 5+ years. When they were walking down the gallows towards where the hanging apparatus was, they actually did Jakare the whole way down, and Bhai Nirmal Singh, who was another Singh who was arrested around the time, he actually responded to their Jakare, and he carried on listening to their Jakare until they were actually hanged. And when they got to the nooses, they kissed the nooses, and then they wanted to even put them on by themselves, so that it was almost like they were accepting, but obviously their hands were tied, so they weren't allowed to do so. The nooses were put on, their heads weren't covered, and they happily accepted death. When they were about to go, they did their final fateh. They said Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh, and then they were hanged. They were actually kept hanged for around 30 minutes because the government wanted to make sure that they were actually dead. The government was very scared of Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda and Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha, because despite the security, despite whatever aparadla they had tried, whatever they had ever done to stop them, they were unable to stop their spirit. They were unable to stop that Khalsa spirit that raged inside them. And even at their fancy saza, there was almost thousands of police officers there on standby just in case if they were about to escape. So you can see that even for two people, they had thousands of officers ready on standby in case that they had actually escaped. So that just proves how much power the Khalsa has. And for those people who say, oh, they shouldn't have started that Hathiar Band Sangarsh, well, if you read your history and you understood what was going on at the time, it was a time where we needed that Hathiar Band Sangarsh. If we didn't have that, then we would have been wiped out. Me and you would not be here right now. I mean, especially for the youth as well. The youth would not be here right now because our parents, our forefathers would not have existed, because our parents' generations would have probably been wiped out and there would have been any of us left. So I hope you have all enjoyed. I hope this taught you a little bit about Bhai Harjinder Singh Jinda, Bhai Sukhdev Singh Sukha Shaheed. They have a very long history, all the Karku Singhs do, and so it's definitely important for us to learn as much history as we can. So I hope you have all enjoyed. Bhulan Chukka di Khema. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Akaal Channel ਨੂੰ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰੋ। ਨਵੀਂ ਵੀਡੀਓਜ਼ ਦੀ ਨੋਟੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਬੈਲ ਆਈਕਨ ਨੂੰ ਕਲਿੱਕ ਕਰਨਾ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲਣਾ।